Um, I've been looking into with the Como, as I say, I'm still looking into this Camelot type of utopia paradigm of the Victoria era, which has just been, embraced in Britain, and then in different versions. I mean, the French had their version. The Sun King, the Spaniards, all throughout Europe, the monarchs were kind of following the same trajectory as the British Empire of exploitative and predatory colonization of globally, in order to sustain their luxury, excessive luxury, pomp and circumstance of the monarchs in Europe at the time. And this is what led to the revolutions, and which just brought in more violent and bloody regimes and extremist regimes. It didn't address the problems. And it then led to World War I, World War II. Now we're headed towards World War III. So as I say, I'm still looking at in that context. And, I've been on this for 15 years. So you want to look at the political things, the economic things, from public policy in macro. Go to town on warondomesticterrorism.com and Taking Back America for the People. As I say, in these Machiavellian games, covering Cuomo's case and how it is applicable to my beefs within the judicial systems and the legal systems and the feminists and the political systems and, everything at the macro level. I've been going into, so I'm trying to bring this into more micro level and the social issues. In fact, I was listening today, this morning. It was very, very interesting, because I got into the history of Sicily, but then it also got into the Greek history, because the Sicilian golden era was during the Greek golden era, which self-destructed for the same reasons that everybody else is self-destruction, the different factions and too much luxury and predatory social order of power over, and is the paradigm that we need to stop. So that was very interesting. But so what I looked at because I've been looking at the Kennedy and the Cuomo family within the whole Cuomo affair, because Kerry Kennedy is his ex-wife. She's the head of a human rights NGO, which her mother started in 1968, Ethel Kennedy, who, you talk about one of the problems in this city for the past, what does that make it? Almost 60 years since the Kennedys arrived. That was one of the things with Jackie Bouvier, Kennedy Onassis. She brought respectability and upper crust respectability of the East Coast to the Kennedy family. Because it was interesting, I was looking into, because you had the Irish immigrants into the United States, and that was the potato famine time. and they were denigrated, and they, this all of a sudden is your poor old masses, yeah, for us to exploit, sometimes worse than what they got at home. And why they came here, and part of the reason why you had such poverty in Europe at the time was because of the aristocracy and the monarchs. They're game playing, and they're living the good life, and setting the example of what a civilized and respectable person, how they dress, how they talk, how they walk, how they dance, how they eat, what they eat. But all of these things are just trappings. And in fact, you really had a backlash in the 20th century. It started even with the flappers, who never wanted, no longer wanted the corsets, and it advanced to today. Thank God we don't have to wear hose all the time, us ladies. Man, try and put on one of those things and wear them all day long and not get a snag in it. And those things are expensive and they're uncomfortable. Sure, when you have to dress up and for certain functions, so oblige. But for everyday living, and that's why also you see these millionaires and even billionaires walking around in jeans and t-shirts, and quite frankly, the people who really are wealthy, they live very simply, and they don't show it, and they don't want to show it. The ones that are sitting there telling you how rich they are and all of this stuff that they've got all over the place. You might want to say, can I see your accountant, please, and your tax returns? Like with Trump, my sister. Because I know these people. I've lived with them my entire life. I'm like, excuse me, I know more or less what your husband's got to be making, or you to combine, if it's a 2-income family or 1-income family. I know if you're an expat, you got a lot of benefits. This is the corporate and the diplomatic corps, and the 10%ers there. So I know pretty much what's coming into your house, and I know how much stuff costs because I entertain, I go shopping. I mean, I have artwork in my house, but it's not silver or high-end expensive artwork. It's things, I mean, you don't have to, this whole thing of people who want these $1 million artworks in their homes. I'm like, no, because then I gotta get a security system. Why don't we keep those in the museums? And I'll buy this stuff. I mean, there's plenty of things out there that I'm much more into artisanal. I mean, I do my own. I've just finished this. In fact, I was looking at the Campania region of Italy. And I mean, I love this reminds me of southern France, Spain, that whole Mediterranean area. So I know that area well, and a lot of the issues and differences. I've just started this one. They have bougainvilleas as well. I just started that one. So it's a gorgeous. The food is spectacular. The people, and it's again, it's an extremism, but it's an extremism you see everywhere. And it has a lot to do with the poverty of the situation. So I was talking about the Irish immigrants. So let's go back to the Irish immigrants and the potato famine, because there's a parallel with Sicily. And then you have the Campania region, which is different. And both of Cuomo's parents or grandparents came from the Campania region, whereas the Italian mafia were really the Sicilians. Very historical and very different. So if you look at these two groups, in fact, I was looking at an immigration thing. They were saying through Ellis Island, they were being discriminatory because they put in there if they were Italian, Southern Italian or Northern Italian. You know, there is a difference. I mean, look at Spain, Barcelona, Catalonia, Santander, all the north, Madrid, Extremadura, Andalusia. You know, there's differences there, as there is with North and South Europe, as there is in North and South United States, and within even the states themselves of your urban areas versus your agrarian areas. So these issues just repeat themselves. You can go on to case study throughout history, and you're seeing a trend, guys. These here, these are not isolated incidents. Like Olivier Blanchard, head of research at the IMF. That's one of my pet peeves of his comments. And David Lipton of the IMF would like everybody to believe, and a lot of other people. Those are just two people that, those were comments that I was like, oh, Lordy, Lordy, Lord, am I going to make you eat those words? So with Ireland, it was very, very sad, the documentary of, and they were called Potato People. And of course, the potato is not indigenous to Europe. That came from South America. And of course, the trading that went on with the between the colonies. And it was, it gave a lot of calories. It was not a balanced diet, but for people who live in hunger and food to mouth, this was gold. And you had a huge population explosion amongst those families, because all of a sudden they had, food, and they would survive, and their children would survive, and they would reproduce. One of the things with the body is when it's starving, its reproductive functions don't work very well. So of course, this just set up a situation where you had a huge population explosion. You had a feudal system. Before the British had come in, it had been Gaelic. Not sure if that's Welsh or Irish. Gaelic is Welsh, but you had these chieftains, the local chieftains of the Irish people, who controlled and governed the island. Then the British came in and they introduced this feudal system created a lot of problems. I mean, when I was listening, of course, you had some of the feudal lords and families who had these large estates who really tried to help their people. Others, and of course the feudal lords, if they're going to lose their land, well, everybody's going to lose out. So at the end, they're putting the rock at a hard place, and apparently a lot of them opted out because it was more profitable for them to go into sheep farming. Now, sheep, I know, we were on a sheep farm in Wales when we were in England during the summer there. We spent a month out there, and believe me, I don't know about chasing sheep up and down hills and close the door, close the gate, they're gonna get out. I know with the cat, I mean, I can imagine with the cattle, livestock, they're on the run, close the gate. But what I learned about one of the problems with sheep was, now they may be making a mistake here. Maybe that's the goats, or maybe it's both. But I know with cattle, they don't eat the roots, so your grass will come back. But as I say, I forget if it's sheep or goats. I'm mainly a city girl. But they do eat the roots of it. So it is, if it's not managed properly, it can also damage your ecosystem and in long-term sustainability. So first you had the potatoes that created a social and economic, you name it, political problem in Ireland, coupled with, the predatory British or English. So then, so kind of the solution was, but also these potato people, it was just a very, they lived in real squalor. And as long as, they just boil the potatoes and eating the potatoes, and that's what they ate all day long. And as long as they had their little community, and it was very, very community oriented, and could dance and party and have enough to just survive, they were okay. So it shows in that type of situation, it gives a kind of an archaeological case study, if you will, of when you have a lack of incentive within the people. And so a lot of these were the ones, I have to get statistics. I don't have that, and exactly, what the different populations were, where they were exported to, because they did go, there were some sent to Australia. And I saw a documentary, it was interesting, about the Irish who'd gone to Australia and how that had been integrated into a certain Irish Australian identity. And then you had Irish coming into the United States, but also Canada. In fact, one of the solutions for the landlords in Ireland was to buy passage for their tenants to just ship them off and get rid of the problem, just like they do with the red light districts. and the poor districts, any place you go in the world, and everybody says, oh yeah, they cleaned up the neighborhood. I said, no, they didn't. They displaced the problem. I'll bet you a buck that problem's just moved. They didn't get rid of the problem, they didn't move it. So it was very sad because there was one estate. It was cheapest to send them to Quebec because you had different prices for different passages to these different places. Quebec was the cheapest, and apparently because the boats were the most substandard, the most dangerous passage, because this was no luxury Titanic ride. I'm sure even the people in Titanic on third class would have been horrified with the conditions of a lot of these boats. I mean, this may not have, the slaves were definitely worse off coming from Africa and in their conditions. I mean, horrible. So, to each his own and to each his own misery. So, you can look at it, well, luckily we're not the Black Arrows going, or, this is atrocious. So, but, at the time, I certainly would have gotten on the Mayflower. These boats going across the ocean. I think I would have been sick the entire time. I mean, the condition. I mean, you read some of these things and you're just like, oh my Lord. Thank you for running water. And we should appreciate it. Instead of just going, we want more, we want more. So you did have, so let's, just concentrate on the Irish immigrant population, and this kind of displaced potato people. As I say, it wasn't just them, and so I'm sure you had varying degrees of education. However, the newcomers, these Irish immigrants to the Quakers and the Puritans, this was a threat to their way of life. I mean, this is not what the Puritan and Quaker reformist groups had been about. These were Catholics. Now, my mother side is Irish Catholic. There's French in there as well, but her father's surname, it was Scallon. And my mom's name was Scallon. And my cousins are Scallons, and then there's Broussards as well, which is there's also the French Cajun, because these are from Louisiana area. And this is this is where I'm not sure with my family, if they're French Cajun, they would have probably gone to Canada, which is maybe the influx into Quebec, and then the Canada area. And then they did come down at one point, I know, and down the Mississippi, and ended up in Louisiana. Now, there were some that came to New Orleans as well, but I don't know if that's that there might have been one trajectory through Canada and then down, and I mean, my mom's from Alexandria, Louisiana. So again, I'd have to look at the different influxes, but you're talking about a similar group. And the Irish were seen as, drunkards and gambling and just disruptive and not of the Puritan and Quaker values, which were predominant in the colonies, even if they weren't properly applied. And that's why, there was the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights have never been implemented properly. And you can trace it back to the early, since the very beginning of the United States. And as I say, this is where I get into vindicating John Dickinson. We need to argue these things in court. We need to discuss these things and arrive at a peaceful discord and solution. And, with the olive branch petition, just ignore them till they go away. Just ignore them till they go away with King George III's court. And I when I read into King George III, I believe it was once again the people around him. If the British monarchy, if King George, and I think, even his wife, had really realized the whole picture, seen the whole picture. And this is a lot of the problems with the monarchs. Yes, they carry the burden of responsibility as well. This is where I get into with the ruling elite in the United States and Europe. I mean, I know a lot of people are guided by the propaganda, their upbringing. This is where everybody needs to start taking a real hard look inside their own origins and family trees and the good things and the bad things, and see the dysfunctionality of each of these systems, as well as the positive parts, and come to a common, because there is a common goal within all people, whether it be men or women. Let's abstract a second from the psychopaths and the narcissists. Those are abnormalities. Unfortunately, they're the guiding ones. But okay, so abstraction from those for one moment, which are usually about 10%. I mean, it depends on how violent your society is and how poverty stricken it is. But most people just want to lead a good life, provide for their families, be productive, and get on with it. The whole stuff about having it all, being a leader, being famous, rich and famous. That's everybody's objective. Lord God. As I say, look at all the rich and famous people in the world. Come from screwed up families, screwed up lives. And I can assure you, I know enough personally, can tell you, they're not happy. And that's why they fill their lives with all sorts of material goods. material wealth and showing everybody how great they are. So the whole thing with the Irish immigrants, and the discrimination against them and the persecution of them. Now, my mom once made a comment to me about that. And I hadn't, I mean, we stopped going to church when I was very young, thank God, because as I say, I have nothing against the Bible, the Torah, or the Quran. It's just all of these people who get get up on a podium, with the women nowadays, and make it into all sorts of gobbledygook, and they turn it around as much as the human rights community has done with all of the their 10 commandments. And Bibles, they got a whole slew of those things out there now. But of course, they're not applying them any more than the religious institutions. So it's just a secular version of what the religious people have been, the crap they've been pulling for 2,000 years at least. I mean, look how. The Catholic Church, starting in the 5th century under Constantine, last-ditch efforts to save the Roman Empire. Of course, it didn't work, and it was just deformed as much as the human rights and the development community has been. So, a lot of my mother's abuse of my father and desire to dominate and control him, I know it was her jealousy for his intelligence and him doing great things where she had ideas, but she wanted to be always in charge and always the center of attention. So nothing ever developed. And the reason that my father, was a success was he wasn't interested in that. He was interested in his work, saving patients and developing a research that he knew could save lives and save limbs. That's the thrombosis. I still know it would be helpful right now. I just can't, everybody's so busy playing games in Washington. I don't care about the little people. And that's always been the case. This is why you had such horrific poverty in Ireland and created a Darfur, Sudan type of thing. And what policymakers are not understanding is this creates generations and generations of displaced people who've gone through horrific trauma, and then their children and everything that they go through, because then they go to new countries and then they go through this assimilation process and exploitation process because they're not being assimilated. This is what, with global expats, my focus has been with was mainly because expats are people who go abroad usually for a shorter period with the intention of returning home. And the corporate ones, the diplomatic ones, the upper crust, they have much more money to spend than a poor immigrant, refugee fleeing for their life. And they are setting the example. I mean, this is my big beef with Federation American Women's Clubs overseas. They're in bed with the corporate world, IMF Family Association, World Bank Family Network, UN LESA. They're just in bed with their parent organizations and the Fourth Reichers and all. And that's been the case with those organizations since the beginning. And the different, regions of the world, whether it be the Asians, the Russians, the Africans, the South Americans, Indians, Middle Easterns. And so going, wait a second, no. We're supposed to be here working towards a peaceful world and equality and all the things that they pretend to stand for. So no, what do? Is they come to the United States and, oh gosh, no, I'm grappling up the ladder of success. I've gotten this big, the bigwig diploma, and now I'm here to cash in. That's the agenda of everybody in Washington, and New York and Madrid and the urban centers. And that's why you have the trickle down has increased income inequality, just as the Sustainable Development Goals, which is basically the same bullshit, will do at a global level. And it's only bullshit because your 10%ers are a bunch of narcissists and psychopaths who just want to go shopping, jet set around the world, schmooze, and have extramarital affairs. So, as I say, you saw this in Europe during we can give it all sorts of different dates, but let's just say 1600s, 1600s on, and because of course by this time, I mean, I think the Catholic Church was already filled with, in Rome, just pomp and circumstance and luxury and hedonism all over the place. So it might have started a little bit later in Northern Europe, but as I say, let's say 1600s of just we're going to have all of the Enlightenment and the Renaissance and be these civilized people and have all of these wonderful ideas about fraternité, liberté, and equality, while our own people we're creating a Darfur, Sudan in our own, backyard. Because okay, Ireland was not England, but this was the thing. It was just predatory wherever they were. And so the Irish, if you look at the Kennedy family, I couldn't read the book. It's After Camelot, and it goes on to all of the different profiles of the Kennedy family. All the dysfunctional, because Lord, is it filled with it, and alcohol problems, drug problems, suicide, all the stuff we see in these families, all over the place. And I started flipping through and reading a little bit, and I was like, I just don't think that I'm in a mental place right now that I can read this. I know it's there. Oh, I don't need to read this. I read through this and it sounds like everybody I know. So particularly in my family in the United States and my political family in Europe. So yeah, I'll get to it a little later. But it's like yeah, I know what's in there. I got the drift. So that's why I've been doing a little bit more than documentaries than relying so much on reading that. But this yeah, how can you expect? Well, the same thing with my family. I mean, I beat my head up against the wall. Explain, they just changed the subject like everybody else, just like the feminists, just like, the politicians, everybody. They know what I'm saying is true. So instead of admit it and face reality, they change the subject. And this is why extremism will not stop until the violence is actually at their doors, and they just can't ignore it anymore. I mean, Twang and Campbell said this in their book, The Narcissism Epidemic, that started in the 1980s with women like Nancy Reagan at the lead on the 1930s. Mommy Dearest, paradigm amongst our mothers, and Cornelia Guest, the libertine, cocaine party hardy, and we just want to keep on partying. I mean, this is the big problem I have. It's not just the Americans that I know of the ruling elite. It's the French, it's the Spanish, it's the English. That's why, nobody will give me a voice. Nobody will help me with anything because they don't want that exposed, because as Twain and Campbell said, none of these narcissists know how to deal with any problems. And these are the people who are leading the world. They can't deal with their own, problems within the family. They all got, just really messed up families, scrambling around, trying to figure out how they're going to cover it up, and so nobody will find out that their kids are on drugs, or they beat their wives, or they abuse their husbands. Oh, no, let's just keep attention on the Taliban and these exterior threats to our country, so we don't have to deal with the interior threats. And until this country takes a good hard look at itself and in the mirror, they won't do that. And it's not just the United States, it's everybody. So it's as I say, the violence will escalate as everybody wants to keep on sweeping things under the carpet. So the Italian, the Irish Catholic, this gets in also to my whole point with Europe and why Europe has been a failure with the European Union, with the injection of money into the South. In the south of Europe, you're considered stupid if you pay your taxes and obey the rules. there's a tradition of corruption. There's a tradition of black market. And a lot of this is related to the Catholic, predatory, exploitative. I just want to sit around and do as little as possible and let everybody else do the work. Now, this is omnipresent in my family, my Catholic family in the United States, my mother and my sisters and my brother. One video, I said to them, I said, you guys, really, take a look at it. This is Zoom, we're preparing stuff for my parents' memorial service. Long story, but I said, take a look at yourselves. I was even like, you know what? I could use this for a movie or a sitcom for Hollywood on like Cinderella and the evil stepsisters screaming at her sister, making her run around, do everything. That's how bad it was. I said, oh, of course they didn't. Change the subject and pretend it didn't happen. Pretend it didn't happen. See, this is the go-to. This is why all women should be believed. I'm like, oh, you hypocrites. Oh God. When I get you, all of you little feminists who are pulling all this crap in court, on that one, I'm gonna have a field day. But double standards there. Like, you can't believe that's why these attacks on Prince Andrew and Prince Cuomo are really pissing me off, because I know how to distinguish between some, real fire, real problems. Now, Ailes, yes, that's a problem, but it's endemic. Weinstein, Epstein, yes, but the cases that they're bringing to the courts on this is just to get a lot of PR, fame and fortune for themselves, money, and promote the idea that all men, all older men in power are all lecherous rapists and sexual predators. So that's the real agenda there with these cases. I've been on this for 15 years. I know, I don't know all of the players because they don't want me to know. I was considered a mole when I heard that one from the very beginning by these different groups within the family court reforms, which is in bed with the domestic violence, which is in bed with the feminist and managerialist. So you have these different ideologies, and a lot of times, one group will adhere to this and that and not another. But they all interconnect, and they're all working together to maintain the inertia. I mean, okay, you're going to say, oh, you're crazy. That's not what we're meaning to do. We want to produce social. I'm like, yeah, well, if you sit around in your little powwows and kumbaya retreats and discussing and coming up with work plans and action plans that nobody ever does anything with and implement, all you're doing is sitting around chewing the fat. I don't care if you're doing it in a country club or men's social club, exclusive social club, frat house. Well, they don't sit around chewing the fat. They sit around looking to get laid. Same difference. because that's all they do in Washington as well. And the result is absolute cacophony and lack of governance. And I do believe that Andrew Cuomo showed, his ability to deal with that. I mean, if it was really to be effective, oh Lord, little buddy, you come over in my corner and we're going to do a house cleaning in this town. You take care of the ones up on Capitol Hill. You take care of the big wigs, and I'll take care of all the game playing little ladder grappling country club ladies and secretaries who want to sit around doing nothing but chewing the fat and partying. You let me take care of those, and this town will be cleaned up, guaranteed. Because if you don't take care of those, you'll never take care of the bigwigs. Never. I mean, one of my, simplifying the situation, but I think even the economists and the politicians and a lot of the bigwigs would be like, yeah, I think that's pretty much. And this is why I insist, no, I want an expat wives club that is a money-making organization. So we are financially independent. I have the whole thing put together, and it'll help with the SDGs, not only in terms of commerce, but implementing the ideological as well as policy and practices within the social order. That's where my concentration is of countries, and of course this reverberates into the political and the economic, which is linked to the commercial, not to the freaking stock market. Okay, I won't deviate. So there is legitimacy in this whole thing. I mean, as I say, I see it within my own family. It's one of the reasons why my mother and my siblings, my younger sister, but like the Spanish BB wives who couldn't stand me because I always had to be doing something. The jealousy that is invoked in people, lazy people, particularly who have been led to believe they're going to do great things in this world and then do nothing because all they're trying to do is cash in and live the good life and con people, go for the next con job. These are not the fundamentals that the colonies were founded upon. And everybody has jumped onto the bandwagon. You had the Irish who did it. You can see it with the Kennedy family. I mean, that's just a classic case study, and how it's reverberated and the damage that the Kennedy family have done in Washington since their arrival. And that's why JFK and Bobby were taken out. I think that they were, Bobby, there's a lot of questions with the Marilyn Monroe death. Because as I say, it was this green, I forget what the doctor's name, green something or other, who apparently, is the one who actually killed her with the injection. But Bobby had been there, and how did she get into that state? I don't know. Peter Lawford later came out when he had been estranged from the Kennedy family, trying to kind of cleaning his name from any kind. Just a lot of questions. So these are not my family. I mean, I'm like, whatever. I as I say, that's why I just can't even get into the Kennedy book right now. Okay, let's see. Who is this in my family? Who is that in my family? And this gets into the Irish Catholic side. Now, my father's side is the from the Puritan, the Wilcox, which is from Thomas Wilcox, the Puritan movement. And there's a whole slew of Wilcoxes that came to the early colonies and really were very, very active in founding this country. The Dickinson family, as I say, I'm not sure when they came. And I know John Paul Jones came, he arrived just about time the French Revolution. And to my knowledge, his brother, I mean, I'm sure there were others. As I say, there was a lot of the reasons that these people came were religious, economic, more religious than political, religious and economic. So a lot of times there would be aunts and uncles and cousins and maybe not all coming over together, but or I've been, I got a place here. I mean, same thing these days. How many times moving around so much, people, yeah, you got a place. Of course, when I'm a student, it's like, yeah, I got a piece of, got a space on the floor for if you'd like. Well, I'm good to go. If it's free and it's clean and I got a bathroom down the hall, that's good. That's good. And I'm always willing to help anybody out. I mean, I haven't had that reciprocated to me with my family and friends during my many years of globe trotting and with nobody backing me up. I don't have a trust fund. I never had one. My younger sister tried to invent one and it pissed me off, but anyway, I won't get into that. So it's important to look and take for everybody, all immigrants, to take a hard look at, are you here to cash in? Are you here to contribute something to the country? Because this gets into my case preparation for the international courts. I mean, I'm going as much against the Spanish, the French, the Americans, the British, everybody, but the standing and cause that I have within my own case, which is the only reason that I can bring something to the courts. That's why I keep on telling victims, Steve's son of the Capitol Hill Police, he should grow a pair. As should the Capitol Hill Labor Committee and police force. Don't tell me you don't know. I worked up in there when I for 5 years when I was a kid. I was like, all you guys do is party. Do not tell me, you Capitol Hill police, you don't know how all they do is sit around and schmooze and cruise and party and chase tail up on Capitol Hill. If you don't know that, then you're brain dead. So don't tell me I'm brain dead, because you're the ones who are brain dead. So sorry, I got off track. But so the thing is, with the Americans, of course, that's I was born an American here in the United States, but also of parents, American parents. Even if I've been born in the United States, I still would have been American and have all of the rights of a citizen of the United States and protection from my government, as do my children, even though they were not born here. Then with my French nationality, I was naturalized. My ex-husband, Spanish, born in Morocco, and grew up in Morocco and France, and was naturalized French. So as you can see, I'm a real melting pot in my family, even with my nuclear family of my ex-husband and myself. Then my children were born in Brussels. Then, they probably don't remember much of Brussels because they were 1.5 and 3 when we went to Paris. Maybe a little bit of, they remember about Paris, but then they were 3 and 5 when we arrived in Bogota. So most of what they would remember really is the years in Bogota and then Spain. However, they were always at the French school, and we were much more integrated into the French community. But this gets into my work in integrating our families into these different communities. And I mean, I integrated with the English, no problem. The French, no problem. Okay, I had to learn the language first. There is a little slight barrier there when it's an accent problem and a little bit of vocabulary rather than a whole new language. Now, for example, with the Italians, give me a month there and I'd be speaking Italian, no problem. They probably would think I was Spanish speaking Italian, but I'd still be okay. And again, with the Spanish, I had to learn the language, so you do have a bit of a barrier there. But once I'm like, people are people, and they have different customs, they have different food, they have different ways of dress. But I mean, I integrate that into everything. I mean, one of my big beefs with the French is the whole chador discussion of them banning that in schools. And I think I'm the only one in France. And I mean, I don't wear a chador. I am not a Muslim. But I defend the right of these people to, it's as much as a dress issue as a religious issue. And you have to respect the differences, particularly if these people, you're going to accept them to come in and live in your country. Now, in my case, I chose to go to another country and live in another culture. And so, yes, it's up to me to adapt to a certain extent without losing my identity. And it's totally possible. As I said, I did it with the English, I did it with the French, I did it with the Spanish, I did it with the Colombian. I mean, a lot of them say, I'm like, ooh, the Latino community in the United States, I feel more at home with them than I do with the Anglophones. However, when it comes to worth ethics, then I'll get on their case. But see, it also legitimizes me getting on their case and saying, you need to rethink this mañana stuff, because if you want to advance either here or in your own country with your own country, you need to, you need to be a little bit more rigorous in your attention to detail and timely, your sense of time, how shall we put it? And that you'll find that with the Southern Europeans, you'll find that with a lot of the Arab countries. Part of it is the period of economic and social development. Because when I say social development, I'm not talking about towards the American, narcissism and industrial excessive consumerism social development. I'm talking about societies that, in terms of Maslow, that you can move up, that you fulfill your survival needs, and so you can start moving up to higher levels of self-fulfillment. But that doesn't happen with just consuming. In fact, what you do great damage to your psyche and yourself by not addressing your addiction problems, and instead of addressing the underlying issues, you just go, doesn't matter if it's drugs, if it's alcohol, shopping, hoarding, whatever. It's all the addictive personality. So, as long as that's as I say, this is the bottom line. And getting into the case of the Cuomo and the Kennedy with the Irish and then the Italian, because I didn't really get into the Italian. When I looked at the Italian, you had the Sicilian Italian, which has a very different history. And it was particular, I think, the Roman, because this is another thing I don't understand in Europe. I saw this was in Sicily. I also saw this in the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain. And I believe it was Extremadura, particularly, but even Andalusia, it was deforested by the Romans. And this is with Sicily. And one of your problems of the perpetual poverty since then was the deforestation. Well, if these, terrains, land, were forest lands, by God, when we start, screwing around with what the ecosystem was naturally, that's when we create problems. Now, these were deforested. Well, why don't they put back forests, and that'll help bring back, some agricultural prosperity and bring back an equal, want to say sustainable and how it should be, ecosystem. I mean, this is one of my pet peeves with Arizona. I mean, you talk about with the Arizona desert, you talk about an ecosystem that is so delicate because of the lack of water. And, you start screwing around with it, you can do an enormous amount of damage. We see the same thing with the Amazon everywhere. So, everybody talks about a paradigm shift and SDGs. Well, these are the type of things that you need to start thinking about if you're going to really do that, instead of having it all and consume and consume and consume. One of the reasons why those areas were never reforested was because the monarchs and the governments, no, they're too busy playing games, power games between themselves. Spanish monarch, now, Queen Letizia. Oh yeah, all you care about is getting your daughter to be queen. See, that now that's the agenda. And another reason why Prince Andrew and the British monarchy is being attacked to disempower, because then that's going to be men, yeah, and they're good men. Prince Charles, Prince Andrew, Prince Edward, Prince William. Now they need to pull up their bootstraps and really get to work and really, instill a paradigm shift in England, Britain, and take the lead, because the British have been at the lead in developing the ideals of democracy and implementation through debate and through legal systems. I was thinking about this. Governor Cuomo's grandmother, Mario Cuomo's mother, Governor Mario Cuomo's mother. I thought this was so cute. She, Mario Cuomo, because I can assure you, particularly with, and this is what I like about the Southern Europeans, is the sense of family. Now, this can be very highly dysfunctional in an abusive family, like you see with the Sicilian model, but with the loving and caring families, because they do exist. Few and far between in the United States as they are in Spain and elsewhere, but they do exist. This does provide a support network for everybody and an inclusiveness for everybody. But when it's like with my family, everybody for himself. If you don't know how to swim with the sharks, you're gonna get eaten. I learned to swim with sharks a long time ago. It doesn't bother me. So and why I guess I was attracted to that type of situation, believing that they really were as caring as they said they were. But that, that is, even with the international development community, they say the family is the cornerstone of society. Now, why they're doing everything they can to destroy the family and a positive family and the paradigm of the Fourth Reichers, they can explain in court. But his mother, so Mario Cuomo, he wanted mom. She didn't speak English very well, and he wanted, her to be proud of him. You know, here he is elected governor, but for him, and see, this is one of the, and it's a good thing within the matriarchal family. You know, I mean, see, it was patriarchal family, but I don't think this, you know, you have to understand, in these families, you might not notice the mom, the mamacita, or the grandmother. You might not notice, but they know what they're doing. And they got their reins out there on everybody. They got their eye out. And when it comes to, you know, the children and the grandchildren and the great grandchildren and everybody, the big boss might well be the grandmother rather than the grandfather. As I say, it depends on the domain. Because see, in the old, you know, there the domain is in the antiquated family, the domains are pretty well defined. When it comes to the social order and everything that goes on there, I'm in charge. Now, when it comes out to the hunting and your, you know, your negocios, you can be in charge out there. But when you get here, we treat you like a king, but that's only because if you behave yourself. So see, there is a equilibrium and a different of, you know, because I told you so. But anyway, so Mario Cuomo's mother had wanted him to be a judge. You know, she was like, oh, okay, you're going to get into politics. You're going to be a judge. When are you going to be a judge? When are you going to be a judge? Because he got elected as governor. But for her, most important is a judge. And I think that little lady knew what she was talking about. I don't think it was just, you know, oh, she's being naive. She doesn't understand the system. I think she might have known what she was talking about, because where things are applied, whether the law means anything or is just a bunch of bullshit that the legislative and executive branch have come up with, is in the courts. And if you have a court system that is totally corrupt, out to lunch, you know, in the pockets of the Fourth Reichers, in the pockets of the the mafia, you know, doesn't matter the name of the group, but unless you have a legal system that is above reproach, the rest of it's all bullshit. Now, of course, you need, you know, an executive branch and a judicial branch to have a brain and understand something about the law, something about governing, and how the laws are translating into governance within, you know, through the courts, through their society, instead of this crapshoot. And everybody for themselves, and I didn't want to cash in, I just want to cash in, I just want to cash in. While we get Minnie, Mickey, Donald, Dumbo, Humpty Dumpty, as our leaders for the past 40 years. And it's just getting worse and worse. I mean, this is why I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. Somebody who passively, you know, have to ask some questions to ask, but you know, for me, and I've been around the block a lot, not just in the United States, in Europe and globally. Not only with people that I know during my lifetime, but everything that I've been looking into for the past 15 years on the internet, and the profiles and the profiles. And this is what human resource management is about, little ladies, in the human resource industry. And if the lawyers would give me a voice and help me take these little ladies to the courts, I'd start cleaning things up. It's not going to be pretty, and it's not going to be easy. But there are no magic wand solutions. You go down that road, you end up in a bloodbath. So there was a movie. Oh, it's really, really, it's a good movie. And it's one of Sean Penn's movie. Worth watching. But here's just the end, this, like for the international development community to listen to this. No, well, it's running here. Okay. Oh, sorry. Cut it off earlier. Here it goes.
Dad, what was the most unexpected thing you ever saw? He told me he'd been somewhere near Cambodia on an island, supporting the boat refugees in the early 70s. He was a young doctor tending to an elderly man sitting against a tree. He asked the man, if you could have anything, what would you want? My father assumed it would be food or money. But the man answered, I would like a book of anything from classic French literature. The man had been a professor of literature at a university until the day he was displaced. It seems we look at refugees as if that's all they've ever been. But they're not like us. They are like us. They're workers, accountants, teachers, builders, farmers. They have families, and they have dreams. So much of the world today has been parted from its dreams. Wars attack dreams. Poverty attacks dreams. Natural disasters attack dreams. Disease attacks dreams. But with your belief, even more than your money, they will achieve their dreams, and I'll tell you why. Because dreams are not luxuries any more than refugees are not like us. They are us. And just like ours, their dreams, more than air itself, are the single most fundamental of all human necessities.
Okay. You know, what I want to highlight on in this is, you know, I'm a refugee in my own country. And I'm a stateless, rightless person in my own country. Because I'm from a privileged white American background that has been canceled by my entourage, my protection racket of the 10 percenters, which has included not just the white people, because I know black, browns, and yellows. And don't want to get involved. Don't want to get involved. I'm too busy cashing in. So, you know, I'm, and in fact, it really angers me, for example, the French and the Spanish that I know here in my country, who are just busy, so busy cashing in, and actually, you know, denigrate me. Oh, you just can't make it. You just can't make it. You're like, I'm like, you don't understand. I didn't come back here to make it in this game. You're barking up that tree and you're going to have some legal problems. I mean, it's pissing me off. Here I am fighting not only for the rule of law and democracy and, you know, the principles of or the fundamentals of my constitution in my country, but also in my you know, in France, where I have where I'm naturalized, and in Spain, where I don't have a nationality, but my children do. So I'm going through all of this in Washington, in part because the French and Spaniards that should be just as outraged as I am about what's going on with, in this case, it's the French ministry, the French foreign ministry, because they have the same obligation of the State Department to oversee and to protect my rights in judicial procedures in Spain. And, you know, the Spanish ruling elite. I mean, as I keep on saying, really, when we get to the end of this game and all of these 10 percenters have to start paying their dues and the day of reckoning for these refugee problems that they're creating, I just gotten to the point where I'm like, well, you've been telling me now for 15 years that I made my bed, I should lie in it. Now the shoe's on the other foot. You want to go and live in squalor? It is what it is. So don't come crying to me when it's time to pay the piper. And as she says, you know, immigrants, they're just like us. I mean, hell, I could do better a job than the president of the World Bank, president of the IMF, president of the United States, and a whole slew of other jobs here in DC. But I'm sitting here headed towards the street in my own country because I'm a rich white American woman. I mean, that's the reality. And, you know, if they want to call me crazy, I'm like, okay, give me a lawyer. Give me a lawyer who's going to actually do what I tell him. And then you'll see how crazy I am. Because I can promise you, I get everybody into court, they'll boom, 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 boom. Domino effect. Clean up Dodge City. And, you know, I mean, Sean Penn, I think he's one of the good ones in Hollywood. If he had a little bit better taste, well, maybe they're not in wives, but I guess that's a rare breed in his entourage as much as it's a rare breed in my entourage, which cross over. So I know, I believe me, I know. I mean, not first line, you know, of course, I don't know Sean Penn and anybody in his immediate entourage, but in his second line, oh yeah, I got quite a few people I know there. So it's all connected. And just as much as I don't want to get involved, I don't want to get involved, and how it can maintain the protection racket of I told two friends, who told two friends, who told two friends, and who told two friends, gets the ball rolling real quick, no matter what the propaganda is on TV. And that was, you know, the Foxcroft, the girls. I told two friends, you know, I'm sure they recite that nowadays. Yeah, but what did you tell your two friends? Did you fill their heads with a bunch of bullshit? Or did you fill their heads with some truths and some facts that you know and some experience? No, I mean, you know, Foxcroft, just like, you know, my mother, everybody else that I know in Washington and amongst the European and American ruling elite, they just want to maintain the facade of respectable, you know, civilized people who in reality are backstabbing bitches and SOBs. In there was some contractors who were with Ingrid Betancourt when she was with the FARC, and they wrote a book. I forget what it's called. Like, I don't forget how many days in the Colombian jungle, and they were with part of the time with Ingrid, and just, you know, real prima donna, which doesn't surprise me from seeing how she's acted in the past decade. And her ivory tower existence, you know, she should be here down in the streets with me in Washington going, just say no to the war on drugs. Just say no to the new Jim Crow. But no, she's too busy with her career as a human rights expert with Baltazar Garzon. You know, it's just, it's, as I say, I know personally too many people in the game and what they're doing and how they're covering up for everything. And that's why I know, as long as that continues, the road towards violence and the demise of democracy will continue as well. And everybody who keeps silent and keeps on ignoring me and keeps on ignoring me, when we get to the end of the road, you know, this will come under the Patriot Act. I mean, the whole insurrection stuff, January 6th, I'm like, yeah, these guys are right. I mean, since since 2011, that was the first jurisprudence on violence against women as human rights violations by Shari Bettinger Lopez lead counsel. And I said, oh, well, if the Americans claim, this was their defense, claim that they do not have control over the courts at the state and local level, their raison d'etre ceases to exist. So let's go to the international courts and attack them on that one. You really get them by the balls like that? You really get some teeth into that? You really embarrass these guys in front of the entire world? They'll get their shit together. They'll start moving. But that's what it's gonna take. Because these are extremists. You cannot negotiate with terrorists. And we have terrorists that control the Republican Party as much as the Democratic Party. You can't negotiate with them because it's their way or the highway. Been doing it for 15 years, not my entire life. So I know what I'm talking about. And if there's somebody out there who you can negotiate with within those parties, tell them to give me a call. Sit down and talk. But until I see some good faith, I just have to, work under the evidence, which shows that there's nothing but bad faith in this city. And governments, across the globe. So I guess that's, but as I say, for all of the immigrants here, if they go, oh yeah, poor us, we were just coming here, to cash in. I'm like, oh, excuse me, I'm also an immigrant in other places. And I'm fighting for democracy in those countries as much as my own, while you are here cashing in and contributing to the destruction of my country. After you fled your own, maybe if you stayed at your own country and worked towards upholding the rights that you claim that you came here to enjoy, then we get rid of this vicious cycle. So I hope the immigrants will reflect on that a little bit. Because I'm not going to be used as a punching bag and a sacrificial lamb and go, oh yeah, well, it's okay. Yeah, you want to sacrifice me? I'll let you do that. No, I'll sacrifice you. As I say, in the courts. Everybody, this is another thing, the second that you tell anybody that you're not going to put up with it and you're going to fight back, all of a sudden you're threatening them with violence because that's how they think. Yet more proof of how psychopathic everybody is here. So anyway, okay, well, that's it. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.